What's going on, guys? Bushur here. So this is going to be Evo story time. I'm going to tell you guys about my Evo and how I got it and where it started off and where it's at currently. So I bought an Evo about 2 years ago, sight unseen from an auction.
It's about to get all stupid up in here!
So I basically was looking for Evos from Copart and from other places, and I happened to stumble upon this Evo that kind of looked like it had some goodies. So I was like, you know what, maybe if the bid is right, if the money's right, maybe we can do something fun with it. So in the beginning, what really attracted me to the car was I saw that it was vinyl wrapped. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Maybe there's some other stuff done to it. So for some reason, I had the bright idea to, okay, let me fact check this VIN number. Let me run it through Google, see if maybe I can find it in a forum or maybe I can find it in a for sale listing, something like that. I ran it through Google and come to find out I found both.
Patrick, your genius is showing.
Where?
So I figured out that it had been sold in the forums once from, I think, the original owner to the second owner. And then the second owner built the car in Florida and then listed it up for sale maybe about a year prior to me bidding on it. And in that listing, it had a full build sheet. So I knew every single thing that's in the car. Now, going into it, I knew that the car wasn't running, so something must have happened. When they included the engine bay pic, it definitely looked like the wiring harness was damaged, so maybe the motor went out and then damaged the wiring harness, or wiring harness went out and damaged the motor. Somehow, maybe they're related. But I did see what looked like a pretty good short block head and an aftermarket exhaust manifold. I thought, okay, worst case scenario, if I buy this Evo, I can either part it out or I can get a motor built and then drop a motor into it. And so, you know, I went on to bidding. So I started bidding on the car, kept going up and up. I was like, okay, my max that I'll spend is maybe like 13 or 14,000. Went up, probably around like the 8,000 mark. Everybody else stopped bidding. It was just me and a guy from North Carolina. We bidded together until about the 11,000 mark. And I think at 11,100, I won the car. So of course, first of all, I got super excited. Woke up at 7 o'clock in the morning just to bid on this car and I won it. So got ready, got up, went to the bank, got all the paperwork ready, sent out the wire to take ownership of the car, and then that's where it kind of all began. So then the first issue happened was, well, because it's not running and driving, how am I going to get it onto a truck to get it shipped out from, I think it was Michigan or Ohio, to me? So I spent the next couple weeks trying to get some shipping truck company to come grab the car and bring it to me, but nobody wanted to do it. So I ended up thinking, okay, well, if I can do a covered carrier, it's a little more expensive, but usually they have a winch and some other tools to get cars that aren't operable or very, very low, that sort of thing. Ended up finding a covered carrier that is willing to take the car. They picked it up in like 2-3 days, shipped it to my house. The only frustration about the time between me deciding to go from open carry to covered carry for the car was it took about 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, and the yards charge per day storage fees, and they even charge on days that they're closed. Robbery! Not fair, but whatever. So I bit the bullet for I think 2.5 weeks, paid the storage fees, finally got somebody to come pick up the car. In 3-4 days, the car was at my doorstep, and of course I walked outside, was super excited. It was on the second level of this shipping, on this big like semi. Dropped the car down. Car looked actually pretty nice. Exterior was in almost perfect condition. I could see on the front bumper there was definitely some tears on the wrap, and the front lip, it looks like when they tried to like lift the car with probably a forklift of some sort, they completely destroyed the front lip. So I pushed it into my garage, pulled the front bumper off, pulled the lip off. Lip wasn't fixable. The bumper was still okay though, so I'm going to just remount the bumper. I put a new lip on the bumper, and then I popped the hood. And then I started to figure out why this car went to auction. There was definitely a few issues with it. What I think was the motor had let go, probably for one of two reasons. So the car was in either Michigan or Ohio, like I said. So in those states, when it gets very cold, E85 on the pumps isn't really E85. It's like E30 or E50. So I think the guy that had the car pumped it into the car thinking it's E85, did a couple pulls, and it blew up, windowed a hole through the short block, which then I think hit part of the wiring harness, caused exposed wire to touch, which then damaged part of the wiring harness. Or the second thing that could have happened was if the battery dies on an Evo, depending on which map you set in Tephra, it'll default to that map. So for example, if he's putting pump gas into the car and the battery dies, and when he jumps the car, if the map that it resets to is the ethanol map, that means that he's running pump gas on a map that's meant for ethanol, which means much higher boost and way more advanced timing. That's extremely dangerous. That's another reason it could have blown up. But to get back to the car, I noticed that, like I said, windowed a hole through the short block. I think that caused exposed wiring to touch. That exposed wiring touch damaged part of the harness. So I'm like, okay, a couple things I'm gonna need immediately. Short block and a wiring harness. So then I started hunting everywhere I could. All the short blocks I found were in like terrible condition. They were already 20 over or 40 over as it sat. And I was like, I don't really want to get a 40 over block. I'm not sure how well, if I could even use that. I'd have to get 40 over pistons. And then if I want to sleeve it, I'd have to deal with sleeves. I was trying to just find like a clean short block. I ended up by chance, and I think it's Daytona Mitsubishi in Florida or Dayton Mitsubishi in Florida. They had a short block on sale, brand new from Mitsubishi, so an Evo 9 block for like $2,800 shipped. So I was like, done, sold. So I shipped that to my engine builder and my tuner. They started to get that ready. We took the pistons and rods out, so we're gonna put better pistons, Wiseco pistons, Manley rods, you know, really build the motor. But like I said, so there were other issues to the car. So that wiring harness. So first of all, I got a wiring harness from England. The wiring harness that they had sent me, even though I had requested a left-hand drive Evo 9 harness, they sent me a right-hand drive Evo 9 harness. So the harness was not usable, unfortunately. So I had to send that back. They, by chance, happened to have a left-hand drive Evo 9 harness. So we basically just did an exchange. They shipped the harness to me. Now, they described it as a perfect harness. It was 100% not a perfect harness. It needed alternator wiring and alternator wiring harness and some wiring to be rewired and kind of fixed, and some other small issues tended to. So then it took probably between 6 and 9 months just to source that good block and get it to the engine builder, and then source that good wiring harness and get it to the engine builder. So now we kind of have the basics of this is what we know went wrong. From there, we noticed a couple other things. When the motor went out, it damaged the baffled oil pan that was on it, so we got a new OEM oil pan. We also noticed there was some slight scratching on the cams, so on the GSC S2s that were in the car. We ended up just ditching those, went to the S3s, thought, you know what, we're replacing the cams, go big or go home, let's just do that. So that was kind of everything that was wrong with the car up until about last week, when we figured out the turbo that's in it is blown, and it's also not rebuildable. Finding the parts for the 6266 that I have in the car right now would be almost impossible. So I've been kind of considering other options for the car, and the engine builder is recommending an FP0. I think I'm going to end up going with that. It'll spool faster than the 6266, spool harder, hit harder, and spool for a longer part of the RPM range. So some benefits as to buying this car. When I got the car, I was pleasantly surprised as to some of the things I found in it. So the first thing that I noticed in the auction was it was vinyl wrapped. I'm like, okay, cool. Pop the hood, it's on BCs. The suspension is new. It's in perfect condition. So besides the BCs, I was right in the beginning when I saw the engine bay pick and saw that exhaust manifold. It did come with the 6266, but that ended up not even mattering. It also came with good FIC 2150 injectors, a good double pumper from Bushur with 255s in it, and a Hobbs Switch. It was on speed density, which is fine. Short route intercooler piping, and it has the ETS. I think it's a 3.5 or 4-inch intercooler, whichever the biggest intercooler that ETS offers is. It also had a Carbon fiber hood carbon fiber hood that was vinyl wrapped to match the satin white of the exterior. When you go into the interior of the car, it is perfect. I spent probably an hour detailing the interior, but there's no stains, no tears. I literally just cleaned the floor mats, cleaned the suede and the leather on the seats, and then wiped down the dash, and it's perfect interior. It also came with 3 gauges. They're AEM gauges for fuel, air fuel, and I think oil pressure. So besides the interior being perfect, the other thing that was super cool about the car was every VIN tag on every panel matched. So that means that the car had never had any of its panels replaced. So the car was basically totaled out because of what had happened to the motor and what had happened to the wiring harness. It also came with a stage 5 built cylinder head from MAPerformance. I think I got very, very lucky with this car. I found an Evo 9 with under 100k miles on it that's never been in an accident. Vinyl wrapped, has a perfect interior, came with BCs, came with an ETS intercooler, an amazing fuel system, basically like the best you can get unless you upgrade to like 450s. It also came with a slew of other smaller goodies. Now, I plan on keeping this car for a very long time. I'm going to start to kind of notate like what's going on with the car. So like I said, to this point, the head is good, the motor is good, and fuel system's fine, intercooler's good, clutch is good, transmission's good. Now the last thing is to have the turbo replaced. So the 6266, we were able to get the car running, but because the turbo really needs a rebuild, it wasn't running super well. Once we drop this new turbo into it, which I'm really thinking to go with the FP0, then we can start to break in the motor, tune it, and we're good to go. This is gonna be a fun build. Thanks for watching, follow along for the build, and I'll see you guys on the next one.